All right, good stuff. Sorry about that. My Windows laptop, my Surface Pro, has given up, I guess, on QQ. So now I'm using my old Lenovo laptop. I don't know what that says about American laptops versus Chinese laptops. But all right, let's see if we can get the video to work now. Yes, brilliant. Hello. And once again, I have John here with me, who will be helping us translate. So, and we are talking today about the one, the only Thomas Aquinas, saint of the Catholic Church. So he should be Saint Thomas Aquinas. Okay. Whew. I'm happy to see you as well. Sorry, I can't read your Chinese name, but 0126. All right. So everyone can see my screen. Great. So let's get started with the presentation on Thomas Aquinas and our fourth philosopher and how to think. So I thought I'd do something a little different for this class, to like give you guys an outline of the class, make it more clear. I've started off the class with a group of questions. So why are we talking about Aquinas? Who was Thomas Aquinas? What were the historical forces that influenced Thomas Aquinas? What were the key elements of Aquinas' beliefs? How did Aquinas come up with his ideas? How did Aquinas argue his points? So this isn't different from what we were doing before. We still got introduction, biography, historical background, philosophy, background to philosophy, then finally his written works. But I just wanted to make it very clear to you guys exactly what each section is for. And at the end of each section, as you'll see, we're going to answer one of the questions. So at the end of the introduction, we'll answer the question, why are we talking about Thomas Aquinas? Then with the biography, we'll answer the question, who was Thomas Aquinas? All right, bit of a different structure. I hope it helps. It should be better. We'll see. All right, so let's start with the introduction. So Thomas Aquinas was an Italian and Dominican, not as in the country, but as a religious thing, friar and priest, lived from 1225 to 1274. Friars, religious part of the Catholic Church, they had to vow chastity, poverty, and obedience, and that meant they weren't allowed to have wives, they weren't allowed to have money, and they had to obey the Catholic Church. They had to serve society. So he attempted to synthesize or put together Aristotelian thought, so Aristotle and Christianity, and he succeeded. And this lasted for at least 400 years, and you could probably argue even longer. So he's a saint in the Catholic Church. If any of you want to become a Catholic priest, well, I doubt it, but if you do, you'll have to read him and you'll have to learn what he says. I'm not Catholic. I don't have like a belief in Thomas Aquinas. So I read him as Russell does in our pre-reading, as a philosopher. So he's a good philosopher, but he's overrated. As you guys learned in the pre-reading, Russell says whenever he states something, like the good part is whenever he states an argument, he states it clearly, whether it agrees with him or disagrees with him, and he knows philosophy really well. But the problem that Russell has with him is that the conclusion is fixed in advance, right? That whenever Aquinas argues, he already knows what he believes. So he never actually finds out knowledge. He just supports the knowledge he has. And here, just added a little key thing to remember. We have to understand his times to understand what influenced him, or else we'll be sort of, very confused about why he believed what he believed. All right, so I'm going to have John do a quick translation for me.
Friar 的 order， 就是说 Friar 的意思是托伯森，他们除了传统的教士要守贞洁、守顺从的愿之外，他们还要守庭院，就是一生不能有太多的财产。然后托马斯阿奎那在阐释结合亚里士多德哲学和基督教哲学。
A little louder.
Okay, sorry. Yes, 我们刚才说，托马斯阿奎那是一个多明我会士的修士。那多明我会士很重要，它是在13、12世纪兴起的一个托伯森修会。所谓托伯森修会，就是不仅要守贞洁、守顺从愿，还要发庭院，就是不能有太多的财产。那阿奎那就是是13世纪当然是最重要的经院哲学家，在阐释综合基督教哲学和亚里士多德的路上，他走得很远。然后他也是一个天主教教会的圣徒，但是罗素不太喜欢他。
All right. So thank you, John. So now in our outline, we've answered our first question. So first question is, why are we talking about Thomas Aquinas? Now the answer is Thomas Aquinas is a major figure in Western philosophy, critically important figure in Catholic philosophy. So that's why we're talking about Thomas Aquinas. So the outline should make sense to people now. So next up, biography of Thomas Aquinas. So Thomas Aquinas, who is this guy here, he didn't have a halo in real life, and presumably in real life he just wore the rest though. So he was born to a wealthy family in Sicily in 1225, which is now Italy. It wasn't back then. Back then Italy was still divided up into various countries. He was born during a time of conflict between the Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II and Pope Gregory IX. We'll go over a lot of these conflicts much later in the course when we talk about how things should work, because Machiavelli has a lot to say about these conflicts. But for right now, it's not too important. So his family wanted him to become an abbot, which was the head of a monastery. It would be very important. He'd be very rich, and he'd also... You're not supposed to have a wife as a head of a monastery, but everyone did it anyways, so he'd still be able to have a family. His wealthy family hated the idea that he wanted to become a friar, because instead of becoming someone wealthy with a family and a great job, he wanted to become poor and no wife and serve the public. So they actually kidnapped him, and they held him prisoner for a year. And there's actually a legend that while he was prisoner, his brother hires a woman to come into his room and to like try to seduce him, try to kiss him, so could get him to like break his vows, so then he would have to give up becoming a friar. And St. Thomas Aquinas grabs a poker from a fire, which is the metal thing you use to stir up a fire. He grabs a poker from the fire and he chases her out of his room with like this red hot poker. And then his family gave up and they let him go free, and then he became a friar. So he was a famous professor and preacher during his lifetime. He wrote many works. He supposedly gained the power to levitate, which is, don't know, in order to become a saint in the Catholic Church, miracles have to be associated with you. So when Thomas Aquinas was put up to be a saint after his death, they had to say he could do something miraculous. So they said he could levitate or fly. Sort of ridiculous, but that is how the sainthood process works. He died in 1274, and he was canonized due to his prominence as a scholar. All right, so I think that's pretty clear. I don't think we need translation. Everyone okay with Thomas Aquinas's biography? Yeah. 清楚了吗? Yeah, he didn't live like a super long life. It was pretty long, like by the standards of the day. You know, people didn't live long back then, but he didn't live a long life by our standards. All right. So in our outline of the class, Thomas Aquinas' life, he was a Catholic religious leader during the 1200s. Okay. So next up, historical background, where things get a little fun. So I've made this diagram here. It is not particularly fancy, but hopefully it makes sense. So Thomas Aquinas is Catholic Church, Dominican friars produced Thomas Aquinas on the one hand, Socrates to Plato to Aristotle to Islamic scholars to Thomas Aquinas on the other hand. So we'll see exactly what this means, but this is the basic diagram for your historical background. So let's talk about Aristotle first. So as you guys know, Aristotle dies during a time of decline in Greece, right? So first, Aristotle is spread by Alexander the Great, and then somewhat spread by the Roman Empire. But after the Roman Empire collapses, Aristotle and the rest of the Greek thinkers are pretty much lost to Europe. That's part of the reason why this is called the Dark Ages, because they lose the light of knowledge. So luckily, Aristotle wasn't completely lost. He's taken up by the Islamic world, including thinkers like Maimonides. So after he's taken up by the Islamic world, Aristotle is translated from Arabic to Latin by priests and monks in the 12th century. One of the main places where it's translated is Sicily, which is, of course, where Aquinas is born. Because, as we mentioned, along with Spain, Sicily is also under Muslim control, except for a much briefer period of time. But you have the same idea of Muslims and Christians and Jews are all in one place, so the Muslims transmit knowledge of the Greeks to the Christians. So the church tries to prohibit discussions of Aristotle at this point because, well, they see him as like a challenge to the church. People occasionally get in trouble for it. Aquinas gets in trouble for it. It appears at some points that something really bad is going to happen to him, but nothing that bad ends up happening to Aquinas, at least. Eventually they give up, and Aristotle is accepted by the church. And some members of the church, including Aquinas, adopt Aristotle to an amazing extent. So, for example, Albertus Magnus, who is Aquinas' mentor, and another leader in the church, another very prominent leader in the church, has this quote: "Know that a man is not perfected in philosophy if it weren't, or if it's not for the knowledge of the two philosophers, Aristotle and Plato." So really, they accept and adopt Aristotle and Plato, but especially Aristotle, to an amazing extent. All right. So let's talk about the other half of the Aquinas equation. So the other half, along with the intellectual influence of Aristotle through the Muslims, is the religious influence, which is the Dominican order. So the Dominicans are friars. They're founded for the purpose of preaching among the people. So instead of going in a church and waiting for people to come to them, they go out and they talk to the people. They're technically mendicants, which means they're poor, but that doesn't mean they're beggars. They're very well organized and they're very highly educated. Some of the most educated people in Europe at this time. They just don't have any money. So as you might expect from a group that tries to preach among the people and says we refuse to have any money, they're formed in response to a church that's growing increasingly wealthy, and as they see it, is straying from God's path. So the church was set up for a certain thing, and now they feel like the church is instead just serving as, a place for rich people to become richer. You remember Aquinas's parents want him to join the church so he can have a cushy job, and the Dominicans don't like that. So in terms of personal influence on Aquinas, Albertus Magnus was a very prominent Dominican friar. That's this guy here. And he is actually one of the first Europeans to read Islamic translations and comment on Aristotle. So we still have his commentaries, which is part of the reason why Aquinas knows Aristotle so well. All right. So in terms of our outline, so I think this might help. Historical background: there's a movement of the church towards being educated and public focused, and Greek thought was being reintroduced towards the West, or to the West. All right. Historical background makes sense to everyone? All right. Yeah, I don't think it's too complicated, and I do want to get onto philosophy, so we're going to skip the translation for historical background, and we'll have a translation for the philosophy instead, because that gets a little tricky. Not as bad as Maimonides, but a little tricky. All right. So Thomas Aquinas' philosophy. Let's talk about that. So first of all, Thomas Aquinas wrote a ton. Generally speaking, it's theology and philosophy. So he talks about God and religion, and he also talks about, we'd consider the parts of philosophy, so knowledge, what the world is made up of, that sort of thing, although it does get pretty confused in his writings. One thing that's sort of strange is they're very highly regarded by the Catholic Church, both his theology and his philosophy. So they really don't believe you should debate his philosophy. So I actually have a quote here from a Pope Pius X, who lives in the 19th century, actually, up until World War I. So this is very late. And look what he says about Thomas Aquinas' philosophy. The capital theses in the philosophy are not to be placed in the category of opinions capable of being debated one way or another, but are to be considered as the foundations upon which the whole science of natural and divine things is based. Such principles are once removed or in any way impaired, it must necessarily follow that students of the sacred sciences will ultimately fail to perceive so much as the meaning of the words which the dogmas of divine revelation are proposed by the magistracy of the church. So this is a very complicated way of saying you can't debate what anything that Thomas Aquinas says. Instead, you have to consider them as what science of everything is based on, both religion and normal science, like physics and biology and whatever. And he says, if you do start debating them, then everyone will actually not even be able to understand the words of the Bible. So this is Pius X in the 19th/20th century, 1800s, 1900s, saying you can't disagree with someone who wrote in the 1200s, or else words will lose meaning. It's pretty extreme. So again, like, count yourself very lucky that that I'm not very, like, you're not studying to be a Catholic priest, because if you were, we wouldn't be able to have a class like this. I would just have to tell you what Thomas Aquinas said, and you'd have to memorize it and agree with it, and you wouldn't be allowed to question it. Luckily, you're not studying to become a Catholic priest, so let's look at Thomas Aquinas' philosophy like we look at everyone else's, understand it, see how it works, agree with it, disagree with it, all that stuff. Okay. So I've sort of taken only the critical parts of what I think of as Thomas Aquinas' philosophy. So I've avoided the theology. I don't think you guys are particularly interested in that, and it also gets overly confusing. So, and by and the discussion about Marxism, you might be right. I've never tried to become a party member in China, so I wouldn't know. Okay, so Aquinas' philosophy. Some of it should look pretty familiar from Aristotle. Everything is made up of what it is and what it does. So you can describe everything as what it is and what it does. So a cup is this object. It's also something holds water. Everything can be divided into the living and the non-living. And the living is made up of that which acts, the soul, and that which is acted on the body. So you notice how he's categorizing things here. And these are somewhat similar categories to Aristotle. And you know how, and like this pattern of categorizing and then categorizing, yeah, that is totally Aristotelian. You know, Maimonides took it from Aristotle, and now Aquinas is taking it from Aristotle. So man is given every essential degree of perfection by the soul, living, being, and thinking. So you get to live because of your soul, you get to be because of your soul, and you get to think because of your soul. And by the way, this word perfection, we've gone over this before. It's a very, very complicated word. So it'll come up again. Just be aware that when Aquinas says perfection, he doesn't mean it in the same way that we mean it when we're normally speaking English. All right. We see things with our eyes. We understand them with our soul. And lastly, God is perfect, or last for this page rather, God is perfect and he is the same as what he does. So everything is made up of what it is and what it does. God is the same as what he does. All right, so let's go on to the next thing, and then I'll go back and have John translate this for us. It's a little bit of reprieve. 2 fundamental axioms of being: non-contradiction and principle of causality. So the only thing that defines what exists is that it can't contradict itself and that it has to be caused by something. So Socrates can exist because you could say Socrates is a man and Socrates was born from someone else. You can't say Socrates is a man and not a man, because that would contradict itself. And you couldn't say Socrates just sprang up fully formed, because then he wouldn't have been caused by anything. All right. And then going on in terms of how we describe things, so we talked about how things are, how things come to be, and now how we describe things. We have univocality, which are general descriptors. So milk from cows, milk from goats. This is a baby cow, and this is a baby goat, which are both very cute. By the way, in English, a baby goat is called a kid. It's not super important for this lesson, but I thought you might want to know. Like, baby cow is called a calf. Again, not super important, but you might want to know. So anyways, general descriptors. It's not exactly the same type of milk, but we describe them the same way because they're both milk. Then we have other ways of describing. Analogy, so comparing things. Healthy food and healthy animals. So you can say hay is healthy food for a cow because it makes the cow healthy. So that's comparing things. And then lastly, we have equivocation, using the same word for different things. So we have a hard surface and a hard test, which I think there's the same thing in Chinese for hard surface and a hard test. John, can you remind me of the Chinese word for like hard?
难或者是很硬。
Yeah.
对。
So you can say like that test was hard.
很难。
Yeah, 很难. Yeah. All right. And then finishing up Aquinas' philosophy, God acts in everything and everyone according to their nature. So this is just sort of other things. So in terms of, first, everything is caused by something else. Everything has an ultimate purpose. So this makes sense from Aristotle. Everything's caused by something else. Everything has an ultimate purpose. God acts in everything and everyone according to their nature. So if you're a bad person, the reason why you're doing bad things is because God knows that you're bad. And last, people only really know things when what they know can be seen in the outside world. So Aquinas is placing an emphasis on perception over reason. All right, so I know that was a lot to take in. I'm going to have John translate this philosophy for us. And then after that, we're going to see exactly how Aquinas came up with these crazy ideas. All right.
Okay, so 就是首先Trevor 说到了，就是对于人的二分，在我们的理解里，当然我们现代人的理解很大程度上和托马斯阿奎那是相似的，就是人是有身体有灵魂的，灵魂是一个 actus 或者说是人们要做的事情，而身体是一个 object 是那个东西。当我们在听到的时候，我们会不会有联想到，比如说亚里士多德对人的物质和形式的区分呢？那确实的，阿奎那对人的描述 也很类似于这一点。但是呢，阿奎那在对上帝的描述中，他做了一个特殊的处理。他说，因为上帝是完美的，上帝只是那个 actus， 上帝只是那个做的事情，他只是那个行为，而他不是一个对象，不是一个我们可以谈论的事物。所以在这一点上，阿奎那呢，非常对上帝的描述是和对事物的描述非常的不同，这个挺重要的。然后下一页里，阿奎那谈到，就是我们在对这个世界的描述，因为这个世界的描述，因为这个世界的所有东西是都服从于，所谓的和谐律或者说自洽律，就是它不会有矛盾。一个人不可能既是羊，一个动物不可能既是羊又是牛，并且呢也服从所谓的因果律，就是一个东西它的来去自有因果。在这种情况下，我们对世界的描述呢？阿奎那说，我们对词语的处理，其实这里是很语言哲学的一个范畴的分类。但是我们对这个世界的处理是对语言词汇的3种处理构成的。第一种处理呢，我们用同样的词来表示一个同样的事物，比如说牛的奶和羊的奶，它们都是同样是奶，只不过我们要通过具体的位象来更加细分它们的 category。第二种情况呢，我们用相同的词来表示不是那么相似的东西，但是它们又略有相似。比如说健康的动物和健康的食物呀，我们可以说健康的动物当然可以在它身上取得健康的肉类，但是这2个健康我们分明觉得它似乎不是那么相似的一种健康。那第3种情况下，我们用同一个词表示2种完全不同的意思。比如说一个很难的考试和一个很硬的表面，我们看到在英文里都用 hard 这样一个词，但是这样一个词表达的却是基本上完全不相关的2种意思。所以这3种对词语的处理方式是我们对这个世界进行区分、描述、归类、表达的一个最基本的操作。然后有同学问第1页，有同学说第1页非常的不清楚。然后对，第1页确实这是阿奎那一个很特殊的表述。我们说过亚里士多德会认为世界上的所有的事物都有所谓的物质和形式的一面。比如说一个花瓶，它的物质就是作为一个你知道花瓶的质料的存在，但是它的功能或者它的形式却是一个有盛水功能的容器这样一个形式。那阿奎那说，对，这个世界上所有的东西都有质料和形式，但是上帝某种意义上只有形式。所以这是一个很重要的阿奎那对于这个世界和神的一个哲学上的区分。我不知道讲清楚了没有？好，谢谢。
All right. Cool stuff. So now, with philosophy, I summarized it here as Aristotle plus God. We'll learn exactly what I mean by that in a second. All right. So first, let's cover the philosophical background of St. Thomas Aquinas. So in terms of the philosophical background, Aquinas is again produced really by 2 intellectual movements, 2 intellectual heritages. First, you have Jewish beliefs, influence the Catholic Church, which influences Catholic Church greatest early thinker, St. Augustine, which influences the Dominican friars. Dominican influences Thomas Aquinas. Then on the other side, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Islamic scholars, Aquinas. All right. So let's figure out exactly how that works. So starting with Aristotle, we've covered Aristotle. We know he's interested in classification and causes, right? Everything is classified, everything is categorized, and everything has those four causes. So Aristotle does believe in a soul, although his conception of it is complicated. So soul isn't the same thing as a mind, and soul is something that's like shared among human beings. His system is philosophy is mostly logically coherent, and it can be used to describe pretty much every subject that was then considered under the purview of philosophy. So logically coherent, it all makes sense. Under the purview of, it's part of the subject of. So there are certain basic questions which trouble Aristotle, which he doesn't know how to answer. He believes in a final cause, so a final purpose for everything, but he doesn't know what the final cause of everything is. He believes in free will, but he can't quite explain it. He believes in a first cause, so something that caused everything, but he doesn't know what that first cause would be. So these big questions that trouble Aristotle are going to be big for Thomas Aquinas. Also, I've used this cheesy image of a cup here, which has partially cut off my text, unfortunately, to remind you guys about the four causes. So, four causes, remember what caused it to come into being, what it made up of, what form it's in, what its purpose is. So, cup made by sculptor, an artisan, an artist. It's made out of ceramic. It's in the form of a cup, and it holds liquid. So those would be the four causes of this cup, with the cute little heart handle here. Okay, so that's Aristotle. And then let's look at the Christian influence of Thomas Aquinas. Now, this isn't totally separate from the Greeks. The Christian philosophers before Aquinas were also influenced by the Greeks, especially by Plato, but much less so. So it's easier to consider them as their own separate theological school or philosophical school. So Christians come up with or get the Jewish view of God. He's all-powerful, all-knowing, and everywhere. Or to use the religious terms, omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent. But they also come up with new ideas. And the most important person who comes up with these new ideas is Augustine of Hippo, who lives from 354 to 430 AD. Or as, of course, he's later known, St. Augustine, is this guy here. And he also has probably my favorite quote of all time, where he finds, so when he was young, he liked partying, he liked women, he liked drinking, and then he finds God. And he's trying to be religious, and he really wants to be religious, but he also loves partying and drinking and whatever too much. And he says, grant me chastity and continence, but not yet. So let me give up women and let me give up alcohol, but later after I'm done with this party. So it's a great quote. So let's go over Augustine's ideas. So first idea, body and soul are separate but married to each other. So this is a different idea from what Aristotle had, in which like the soul and the soul like unifies the body, or the soul is like the form of the body or anything like that. Augustine says the two are separate, but they're married, like husband and wife, so they can't be taken apart. He also says our perception is granted to us by God. So instead of reason, he says we should trust what we see, hear, smell, or instead of faith for another thing. He was also, surprisingly for a guy living in this time period, he's pretty liberal. He says we shouldn't always interpret the Bible literally. Sometimes it's a metaphor. And this is actually important because it allows room for thinkers like Aquinas to have the same sort of arguing and freedom of thought that Maimonides did. And we saw Maimonides was totally okay with arguing and interpreting the Bible as he wanted to. And Augustine sets that up for the Catholics. And so an example from Augustine's point of view, as he says, the 6 days of creation are a metaphor. They say, he said, it's just so people can understand it better, but if we assume that God really is all-powerful, it doesn't make sense that God would take 6 days to create something. He would just create it all instantly. So that's a pretty important step forward. In terms of Augustine's view of people, it says people have free will, but when they sin, they lose free will. Now, this is really pretty weird. You can understand that he's trying to solve this problem of free will that's sort of plagued everyone. But the way he's solving it is very strange, that you're allowed to do whatever you want as long as it's good. And then if you're doing something bad, that means you're not doing what you want. And that's even more troubling because you get sent to hell if you do bad things. So if you're not deciding that you're doing bad things, there's a question of how you actually, why are you getting sent to hell? I can tell you the Catholic Church's answer. So the Catholic Church, which still believes this, they'll still tell you this. They say you actually don't choose to be good. You do choose to be good and you do choose to be evil, but it's already been decided what you're going to choose. So you're choosing something that's already been decided, and that's why you can go to heaven or hell, even if there's no real free will involved. It doesn't really make sense to me either. I think that's just not what free will means, but that is the official Catholic Church answer. So last, Augustine believed critical thinking is vital. If the Bible seems to conflict with our understanding of the world, we must mend our understanding of the Bible. So again, this is pretty important stuff. We have a theologian, a saint, who is saying we can think critically. We don't have to accept everything on faith. So he's opening up room for philosophers in Catholicism. All right, so I'm going to have John go over Aristotle and Augustine really quickly, and then we're going to see exactly how the two came together to produce Aquinas. All right.
OK，我们刚才复习了一下前一节课的内容，就是 Aristotle 他说的所谓4个元因，就是物质因、形式因、目的因和动力因。比如说这个杯子，它的我们又回到这个问题，就是它的物质是陶瓷的，形式是一个杯子，它的目的是装饰或者给人喝水。那么它的动力因是有人把它给制造出来了。然后亚里士多德他的灵魂观呢是和我们现在和我们现代人想象的灵魂挺不一样的，因为他的灵魂观很大程度上套用了他的物质和形式的范畴分类，所以呢，某种意义上在亚里士多德的世界里并没有太独立的灵魂。然后我们刚才说到了对在天主教会中就是阿奎那之前影响最大的 思想家圣奥古斯丁。圣奥古斯丁其实在哲学上并不离亚里士多德太近，相反的，他是一个很重要的受新柏拉图主义影响的人。那么奥古斯丁他Trevor 很喜欢奥古斯丁在《忏悔录》里面的一句话，就是让我请赐给我贞洁和忍耐，但是呢，不是现在，因为奥古斯丁在年轻的时候，他是一个花花公子，他虽然知道基督教的事情，但是他并没有希望很快的接受。当然，这一切，在忏悔录里都是作为一些不堪的过去被写下来的，这是一本很有趣的书。然后呢，在奥古斯丁看来呢，身体和灵魂在某种意义上，是沿着柏拉图的传统，是某种意义上是可分的。我们待会儿可能可以看到，他在这个观点上和阿奎那的不同。那对于奥古斯丁来说，当然，尤其是前期的奥古斯丁，人的自由意志是非常重要的一个神学观点。对于他来说，这是毫无疑问的，因为没有选择，怎么会有罪责？怎么会有担当？人又怎么能够被惩罚呢？我不知道，大家还有什么问题？如果有问题的话，可以现在提出来。都清楚了吗？自由意志呀，free will 当然是一个很重要的概念。其实有各种各样的阐释对于自由意志，比如说强的阐释者呢，就是认为这个世界上没有任何东西是被决定的，你可以选择做 A，也可以选择做 B，这一切的主动权掌握在你手上。但是神学家们会说，不对不对，其实有一些世界上的事情是已经被天意决定的，被神意决定的。你可能觉得自己在做任何决定，但是呢，在你做决定之前，或者上帝已经拨动了你的脑袋，拨动了你的心神，其实你并不是自己在做决定，所以你有一种虚假的自由意志，或者更极端的反自由意志者说，其实人根本就没有自由意志，从一开始都没有。但是总体来说，所谓自由意志就是你所谓的我们所谓的可以选择自己，既可以做 A 也可以做 B 的这种感觉，是不是一个真正的感觉？呀，这是总体的解释。OK，清楚了。OK，
All right, let's go back to Avaro later. It's a good question, but let's go back to that at the end of the class. All right. So now let's talk about when you combine Aristotle and Augustine. So when Thomas Aquinas combines Aristotle and the Church, he ends up with an Aristotelian system of classification where everything revolves around God and the soul which God puts into everything. So God is the cause of things, of everything. He's the result of everything. And he's the one thing that breaks every rule of Aristotle. Everything that puzzles Aristotle, like free will, or the mind, or the ultimate cause of everything, Thomas just puts God in there. So God is sort of like this all-purpose tool that Aquinas is using for Aristotle's philosophy. And everything else is very similar to Aristotle. Occasionally Aquinas expands on it, but really that's Aquinas's big accomplishment, is just putting God as this all-purpose tool into everything. And by the way, here's a sort of cool picture I found online. I don't know if it's photoshopped, but it's God looking through the heavens down on a beach. Probably photoshopped, but all right. So let's revisit Aquinas's philosophy with this new idea of Aristotle and God. So everything is made up of what it is and what it does. That's just a simplification of Aristotle's classifications. Everything can be divided into living and the non-living. Living is made up of that which acts and that which is acted on. So living and the non-living, so that's pretty Aristotelian. Soul versus body is modifying Aristotle to make more sense for the Christian idea of the soul and the body. All right. Man is giving every essential degree of perfection by the soul, living, being, and thinking. So this is departing a bit from Aristotle's view of the soul. Remember, Aristotle is seeing the soul as like unifying force, it's reason, but it's mostly going along with what Aristotle thought. But again, it's modifying it slightly to agree with Christian theology, because the soul is connected to God. And perfection is something that Aristotle also talks about. For Aristotle, it's complicated. For Aquinas, it means closeness to God, which doesn't help clarify because that's not a very clear concept. But again, it's just modified. Perfection is modified for to be more Christian. Soul modified to be more Christian. Everything else kept the same. See things with our eyes, understand them with our soul intellect. See things with our eyes, that's Augustine. Understand them with our intellect, that's Aristotle. See, he literally is combining the two. God is perfect, he is the same as what he does. Aristotle, except God is going to break the rules of Aristotle. So instead of saying everything is what it is and what it does, Aquinas says, well, except God. God is the same as what it does, as what he does. All right. Two fundamental axioms of being, non-contradiction and principle of causality. These are taken pretty much from Aristotle. These are just clarifying Aristotle's points. So non-contradiction, you guys should remember, Maimonides had the same thing. Maimonides also emphasized non-contradiction. He didn't emphasize the principle of causality. That's because non-contradiction comes from Aristotelian logic. That's something that Maimonides followed very closely. So did Aristotle. Principle of causality comes from Aristotelian metaphysics. Aquinas follows it very closely. Maimonides does not. So Maimonides and Aquinas both agree on this, but only Aquinas agrees on this. All of it is taken from Aristotle. All right. 3 ways of describing things. So all of this, univocality, analogy, equivocation. So milk from cows, milk from goats. Healthy food, healthy animal. Hard surface, hard test. This is Aristotelian logic. It's a slight improvement. Aristotle wasn't this explicit about it. He didn't make it so obvious. So it's slight improvement on Aristotle. Everything is caused by something else. Everything has an ultimate purpose. This is Aristotelian metaphysics, but saying everything has an ultimate purpose, that's giving it a Christian sense. So it's no longer like a logical statement. It's no longer a metaphysical statement. Now it's a religious statement because the ultimate purpose is God. God acts in everything and everything according to their nature. So you can see this comes pretty close to Augustine's view, except now Aquinas is categorizing people. That's a very Aristotelian way of thinking. People are categorized. There are worse people, and there are better people. There are good people and there are bad people. So again, we've got Augustine modified to be more Aristotelian. And finally, we've got people only really knows things when what they know can be seen in the outside world. This is just a slight modification of Augustine. All right. So we come up with everything and we get this sense of it's Aristotle modified. just Aristotle modified to be more Christian, to agree with theologians like Augustine. And so this is why Russell complains that the conclusion is fixed and advanced, that Aquinas isn't really trying to discover ultimate truth. He's not really trying to discover the meaning of everything. Instead, he's just trying to fit in two philosophies that he really, really likes. He really, really likes Augustine's ideas and the Catholic Church's ideas, and also he'd be put to death if he didn't agree with them. But he also really, really likes Aristotle's ideas. So he's not trying to find truth. He's just trying to make the two work together. All right, I'm going to have John translate this last bit, and then we'll take a 5-minute break, and then go on to oh man, our Quinque Vi, the how Aquinas argued. All right, so yeah, let's start from here.
Okay, so yeah， 就像 Trevor 刚才说的，就是我们再强调一下几个很重要的点。首先，阿奎那他尝试着结合亚里士多德和基督教教会的教义，然后这是阿奎那之所以伟大的很重要的一个原因，因为他站在两个传统的十字路口，但是他把两个传统试图的结合成一个传统，然后呢。但是呢，罗素不喜欢阿奎那的原因呢，正是因为阿奎那把所有亚里士多德悬置起来的问题，比如说自由意志，比如说最终的那个不动的移动者，他把这些位置都用一个上帝的 image 或者上帝的形象，用这个上帝来解释一切的哲学问题。所以对于罗素来说，一切的问题，当阿奎那提出来的时候，他心里其实有答案了。所以呢，他是一个某种意义上是一个廉价的哲学家。然后呢，我们刚才说到，阿奎那对人的人类学的意义上的图景做了2分，就是人有一个主动的部分，这个主动的部分是作用的部分，是灵魂。那人的身体呢，当然就是那个被动的那个治疗性的部分。这两个部分是紧密结合在一起的，而不是像柏拉图主义者所说的是分开的两个部分。但是呢，很重要的，我们之前强调过，就是阿奎那对上帝的处理，对于他来说，上帝是没有那个被动的部分的，上帝只有行动，上帝只有 actus， 因为上帝是完美的，因为上帝只会做他所做的事情，那上帝只有所谓的那个灵魂的或者是主动的那一部分，这是很重要的一个阿奎那对亚里士多德哲学的化用。那之后的阿奎那的哲学包括他的自洽律或者说和谐律或者说同一律，还有他对因果关系的强调，我们待会儿在他对上帝的证明中都能看到。所以大家现在有什么问题吗？ questions？ 那都清楚了吗？
All right, good stuff. So outline. So remember Aristotle plus God, background philosophy. Augustine plus Aristotle. All right. So it is 10:08 on my end. So let's take a 5-minute break. So I'll see you back here at 10:13, and we'll go over the Quinque Vi. All right, good stuff. See you back here in 5 minutes. Yeah. Whew. All right, hair's a little messed up. All right. Oh, thank you very much. So, what do you guys think of the new outline? Does it make the class better? All right. Good. I'm glad it makes the class better. Makes it a little more clear. Yeah, I think the other thing which I like about it is if you get a little confused on one part, you can just catch up with the outline, so you'll be okay for the next part. So I think I like it. I'm gonna keep it for future classes. All right, good stuff. I'm going to step out for a second myself, but I'll see you back here in 3 minutes. San Fenjong? Is that 3 minutes, right? San Fenjong? Or is that 3 seconds? Yeah? All right. All right. I'm back. How's everyone doing? Doing good? That's good. All right. Ready to begin on Thomas Aquinas's arguments? Quinque Vii? Oh, all right. So actually, we have John here.
Return.
John has returned from whence he came and onto the Quinque Vii. All right. So we now know Aquinas's introduction, biography, historical background, philosophy, background to philosophy. So now we're going to go on to how he actually argued his points. So what it's like to really read Thomas Aquinas. So what specifically we're going to be reading is Thomas Aquinas's Quinque Viae, or if you want to pronounce it in the Latin way, Quinque Viae, which literally means the 5 ways to prove the existence of God. Quinque Viae just means 5 ways. So it's first published in Aquinas's masterwork, his huge book for all the theological teachings, Catholic Church, to use in instructing students who want to be priests, Summa Theologica, which I believe means the sum of all theology. Although it has been a while since I took Latin. So it uses Aristotelian logic terms for Christianity. By the way, so Summa Theologica, pretty cool book. It actually shows that Aquinas read a lot. He cites not only Christian philosophers, but Jewish philosophers and Islamic philosophers as well. So it really does seem like Aquinas read everything he can get his hands on. So a lot like Maimonides, actually, one of the accomplishments of Aquinas, which we don't really appreciate now, is that in an era where books were constantly being lost and knowledge was constantly being lost because there's no printing press, certainly no internet, Aquinas, someone with his amount of knowledge and someone who wrote as much as he did, also helped just because he helped keep knowledge alive. So it's a pretty important accomplishment that we take for granted now. But let's read what Aquinas' original philosophy was. And while you're reading it, remember Russell's criticism. Everything is fixed in advance. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to read the passage, which is difficult to understand. It is really difficult. I'm going to translate it for you guys into simple English. John will translate, I'll comment on it, and John will then translate my simple English and commentary into Chinese. All right, you ready? So we're going to read it literally, translate into simple English, comment on it, and then John will translate into Chinese. All right. So the first and more manifest way is the argument from motion. So this is manifest way, trying to prove the existence of God. It is certain and evident to our senses that in the world some things are in motion. Now whatever is in motion is put in motion by another, for nothing can be in motion except it is in potentiality to that towards which it is in motion, whereas a thing moves inasmuch as it is an act. For motion is nothing else than the reduction of something from potentiality to actuality. Nothing can be reduced from potentiality to actuality except by something in a state of actuality. Thus, that which is actually hot is fire, makes wood, which is potentially hot, to be actually hot, thereby moves and changes it. Now, it is not possible that the same thing should be at once in actuality and potentiality in the same respect, but only in different respects. For what is actually hot cannot simultaneously be potentially hot, but it is simultaneously potentially cold. It's therefore impossible that in the same respect, in the same way, a thing should be mover and moved, i.e. that it should move itself. Therefore, whatever is in motion must be put in motion by another. That by which it is put in motion be itself put in motion, this also must needs be put in motion by another, that by another again. This cannot go on to infinity, because then there would be no first mover, consequently no other mover, seeing that subsequent movers move only inasmuch as they are put in motion by the first mover. staff moves only because it is put in motion by the hand. Therefore, it is necessary to arrive at a first mover, put in motion by no other. This everyone understands to be God. All right. So, simple English. So our first way of proving God is everything that's put in motion, and motion is not just like moving something, it's also anything that has energy or changes. So like if you light something on fire, that's, according to Aquinas, that's it being put in motion. That's not how we use motion in normal English, but that's how Aquinas uses it. So anything that is put in motion needs to put it in motion by something. Else it would just remain as it is, which means not in motion. We can describe things as in motion or potentially in motion, but not both. So to give an example, it wouldn't make sense to say a stick is on fire and potentially on fire, although it would make sense to say that it's on fire and potentially put out. So a stick potentially on fire needs a stick actually on fire. That stick before it was on fire needs another stick on fire, and so on, right? So these twigs can be lit on fire, but before that they need a match. And then that match needs to be put on fire by something. So this is true of all things in motion. They need something to put them in motion. If you trace the motion back and back and back, you get to the first mover, which put itself in motion, which as we know is impossible for a normal object. This is God. So that's the simple English translation. Commentary, so this idea of motion, first of all, it's not easy one. Aquinas isn't very specific about what exactly motion means. He takes the term, or what it means, he takes the term from Aristotle, who also wasn't very clear about what it means. You can see where the argument comes from. You can understand it if you just think of it as normal laws of motion, like, just literally pushing something from here to here. So you could make the same argument, but the argument doesn't work quite as well as it should, just because Aquinas' definition of motion is very strange and a little hard to understand. All right, so that was simple English commentary. John, can we get a translation of the simple English and the commentary?
Yeah. 好，那我们现在开始处理阿奎那的第一个证明，就是上帝存在的证明。这个证明看起来呢，它是一个非常糟糕的证明，因为大概的道理，我想大家已经看懂了。但是我觉得比较有意思的事情，是我们顺着阿奎那的思维，顺着当事人的范畴，我们去看一看他的证明是怎么进行的。首先呢，阿奎那的有几个非常奇怪的前提，我们必须接受它。首先呢，比如说一个东西它不能是既在运动中又在运动的潜能中，就像一个火柴，它不能是既是在点燃着，又是有可能被点燃的，因为后者呢它是没有点燃的，而前者是点燃的，那就违背了所谓的自洽律。那正如一个东西，它不能既是移动者，又是那个被移动者。那在这种情况下，我们世界上的东西都在移动啊。那移动的时候，它就需要一个移动者。那移动者之前呢，又需要移动这个移动者的移动者。当然，这个链条会一直无穷的进行下去。但是对于阿奎那时代的人来说，这样子一直延伸的链条，以至于无穷，是一个不可以接受的哲学现象。因为可能世界上时间就这么多，怎么会有这样子无穷的事件发生呢？所以那阿奎那说，你知道，在某一个地方，这个链条必须要断掉，要不然这个世界呢，可能根本就没有开始的时候。那这个断掉的地方，那会是什么呢？那只会是上帝所在的地方。所以这里有几个前提，首先，一个东西不能在潜能又在现实的运动当中，这是一个我们需要记住的前提。另一个前提是，这个世界上不会有一个无限倒推、无限存在的这样子一个因果的链条，这个链条不会是无限的长。所以接受了这两个前提之后，我们就很好的理解阿奎那第一个证明的逻辑或者说实质了。 清楚了吗？对于 Yeah, it's a good question.
I think a hot thing has a potentiality of cold, and why it cannot actually be cold. So just to be clear about what Aquinas believes and what Aristotle believes. Basically, Aquinas's argument would be, if something's on fire, it's put in motion, right? His idea is, and we'll see he describes hot things and cold things, something somewhat different. He doesn't see that as motion in the same way. So it's not hot things have the potential to be cold or cold things have the potential to be hot. It's specifically that things can be put on fire, and then or they are put on fire. So it's different from just hot and cold. So we'll see his idea of cold. I think what you guys have to understand is that he doesn't. His science is Aristotelian science, and he doesn't have the same knowledge of how hot and cold actually works as you guys do. So he doesn't see that as like he doesn't see that as the same argument. All right. So let's go on to the second argument. You'll see where we get in the third argument. I think he mentions his idea of fourth argument. He mentions his idea of hot and cold and where that comes from.
我想就是对有几个问题确实挺好的，我觉得就是可以很简短的回答，在阿奎那的世界观里，确实一个冷的东西，它就只有热的潜能，而一个热的东西就只有冷的潜能。在性质上，这个 category 它是互相相斥的。然后 and somebody asked it's like a domino。对，它很像多米诺骨牌，但是呢，只是对于阿奎那来说，这个多米诺骨牌的链条不可能是无限长的，这是当时的人一个奇怪的想法，所以我们只能接受。
All right, good stuff. Let's go on to the next one. Let's see if all of these make sense after the last one, and then we'll ask some questions and figure out exactly how this science works. So this is the second argument. Again, I'm going to read it directly, read it in simple English, comment on it, and then John will translate. All right. So the second way is from the nature of the efficient cause. In the world of sense, we find there is an order of efficient causes. There is no case known, neither is it indeed possible, in which a thing is found to be the efficient cause of itself, for so it would be prior to itself, which is impossible. Now, efficient causes, it is not possible to go on to infinity, because in all efficient causes following in order, first is the cause of the intermediate cause, and the intermediate is the cause of the ultimate cause, whether the intermediate cause be several or only one. Now, to take away the cause is to take away the effect. Therefore, if there be no first cause among efficient causes, there will be no ultimate nor any intermediate cause. But if in efficient cause it is possible to go on to infinity, there will be no first efficient cause, neither will there be an ultimate effect, nor any intermediate efficient causes, all of which is plainly false. Therefore, it is necessary to admit a first efficient cause to which everyone gives the name of God. So, second argument. Everything is caused by something else. So cause here is like a sculptor causes a sculpture to exist. This guy causes this sand sculpture to exist. Everything is caused by something else. Nothing can be caused by itself, because then it would have to bring itself into existence, which doesn't make sense. Aquinas also says there can't be an infinite regression of causes, because then there would be nothing in existence. So you have to have something first. It can't just keep going back and back and back without any beginning. So there needs to be something which was the first cause, which was God. So that's the simple English. So
is it the same like the first one?
So it's pretty similar to the first one. And in fact, later philosophers will argue that Aquinas is just restating the first one. So let me explain it a little further, and we'll see what we come up with. So you're not alone in thinking that this is pretty similar to the first argument. So my commentary on this is, yeah, I think he realizes about midway through the argument that it's going to be the first one. So instead of saying that like there can't be an infinite regression of causes, I think he tries his best to change it. And he says, well, instead, actually, there can't be an infinite regression because then there would be nothing in existence. So I don't think this switch makes that much sense, because that's the biggest difference between this one and the first one. This idea of there's nothing in existence if there's an infinite regression. So I think the best way to understand this, the best way this argument is framed, is the exact same way as the first one. I think Aquinas tries very hard to make it different from the first one by having this extra thing about there's nothing in existence. Also, I just want to point out that all of this with, causes, this is very Aristotelian. Aquinas is just adding God to it, but all of his reasoning is totally Aristotelian. It's totally from Aristotle. All right. So John, do a quick translation and then on to the next one.
OK， so 我们刚才看到了就是Aquinas 的第二个关于上帝存在的证明，然后呢，这个证明里面又是用到了我们刚才说的对infinite regression 就是这样子一个无限倒推的反驳，在阿奎那看来，这种无限倒推是不可能的。为什么不可能，我们也不知道。但是刚才的问题确实很好，我觉得为什么第一个 argument 和第二个 argument 它们看起来很像，那为什么它还要写成两个呢？我想有时候我们不妨这样子读，因为第二个 argument 像刚才 Trevor 说的，它其实上用到了 Aristotle 在四因说里面的一个很特殊的原因，就是动力因。就是世界上一切的东西，比如说雕塑啊，比如说运动啊，它们都会有它的动力因。那这个动力因它需要找到本身的动力因，再这样子无穷往前推，那第一个动力因当然就是上帝本身。与第一个论证相比呢，运动其实是动力因世界中或者动力因图景中一个很重要的特例。所以某种意义上 ，argument 2呢，其实呢是 argument 1的，我觉得是一种拓展，就是它不仅囊括了运动的现象，它也囊括了别的，比如说制作，比如说雕刻，比如说思想这样子，一个更加复杂的一个更全面的图景。所以我想在这样的视角下，可能我们可以理解到为什么阿奎那把这两个论证写成了两个，是因为它是某种意义上的一种拓展和延伸吧。有什么问题吗？现在我想它的区别不在于一个是 course， 一个是 efficiency， 因为 efficiency 也是 course 的一种，只不过第一种的在第一个 argument 里，那个 course，关于运动的 course 实际上是efficient course 的一种特例，就是所谓的动力因，它其实不仅包括，比如说不仅包括运动，也包括雕刻，也包括其他一切的作用。所以第一个 case 里的运动，它其实是动力因的一个特例而已。我不知道清楚了吗？
All right. So now we're going to go on to the third argument. And the third argument is, again, pretty similar. And at the end of the third argument, we'll talk about how the first three are all generally grouped by later philosophers. So again, I'm going to read it, translate in simple English, comment on it. John will translate. All right. So the third way is taken from possibility and necessity, runs thus. We find in nature things that are possible to be and not to be. Since they are found to be generated and to corrupt, consequently they are possible to be and not to be. It is impossible for these always to exist, for that which is possible not to be at some time is not. Therefore, if everything is possible not to be, then at one time there could have been nothing in existence. Now, if this were true, even now there would be nothing in existence, because that which does not exist only begins to exist by something already existing. Therefore, if at one time nothing was in existence, it would have been impossible for anything to have begun to exist. Thus, even now, nothing would be in existence, which is absurd. Therefore, not all beings are merely possible, but there must exist something, the existence of which is necessary. Every necessary thing either has its necessity caused by another or not. Now, it is impossible to go on to infinity in necessary things which have their necessity caused by another, as has already been proved in regard to efficient causes. Therefore, we could not but postulate the existence of some being having of itself its own necessity, not receiving it from another, but rather causing in others their necessity. This all men speak of as God. Whew. All right, let's translate then to simple English. So, third argument. There are things that could exist or could not exist. So, to be clear, that's things that could exist or not exist. So, like this chick here. It's possible that this chick wouldn't exist. It's also possible that it does exist. We can imagine these things not existing. We have to assume at some time they didn't exist. If everything could not exist, we could assume at some time nothing existed. If nothing existed, then nothing would have ever existed. So there has to be something which had to exist and could bring everything else into existence. This is God. So, here I have chicken and the egg. So these three arguments, these first three arguments, are all grouped as the infinite regress arguments, because all of them depend on going back and back and back and back. This one I think is the weakest of all the arguments, of the three arguments. So you sort of get what Aquinas means by not exist and cause to exist, like, you know, things which exist cause other things to exist. It makes a lot more sense if you're talking about like a living creature, like there has to be some first living creature, and how like there has to be an egg for the chicken, and then there has to be another chicken for that egg. And like maybe it makes sense if you're just saying, well, you have to have something living which can bring everything into existence. But even by the knowledge of science that like Aquinas has, it's very hard to imagine this same argument, instead of using a chicken and an egg, to use just like a rock. Like, you know, looking at the rock and being like, well, that could exist or not exist. Or being like, that rock was caused to come into existence by something that was like necessary. Because you sort of think of like a rock as either always there or broken off from a piece of a bigger rock. Like you don't really get the same obvious sense of egg chicken with just like a rock sitting on the ground. So I think this is the weakest argument of the infinite regresses, but it's very similar. There's this weird twist here where he's depending on us imagining things. If we could imagine that everything could not exist, we can imagine at some time nothing existed. But other than that, it's again pretty similar. All right, so I have a question of being versus existence versus living. So being and existence are the same thing. So being is actually being. It's like having a presence in the world. existing is pretty much the same thing. It's something is brought into existence. Before it didn't have a presence in the world, now it doesn't. Living is different. A chicken is living, a rock does not live. That's the difference between living and non-living. All right. So let's have a translation from John.
当然我们又回到了很重要的这种对无穷链条的一个归谬上来。我们已经注意到，就是阿奎那一直在反复的用同样一个模型，就是当一个因果链或者一个存在链或者一个作用链，它不断的回溯的时候，我们会发现这条回溯的链以至于无穷。当然，这种对无穷回溯的恐惧，或者对于世界无穷细分的恐惧，我们不仅在阿奎那那儿看到，我们也曾经在芝诺那儿看到。所以在接受古人的这种推导前提的情况，我觉得确实离我们今天的思维很远很远。但是在理解阿奎那的证明的时候，我们不妨先把它接受下来，这样子我们才知道它的证明的价值之所在。还有什么别的问题吗？现在
So why couldn't it just everything just happen by accident? I would say from Aquinas's point of view, he just seems to say that that's like a ridiculous question. From my point of view, I think that's a reasonable question. I think that's a totally reasonable objection to what Aquinas says. But Aquinas would say just like that's a silly question.
For a theologian, there must be some reason for everything actually.
Exactly.
Everything is determined, if not by God, also by anything else.
Yeah, very much so. All right, so I assume you guys are okay on this one. So now we're going to go on to a different sort of argument. So this one's sort of fun and very strange. And so now you can get Aquinas's idea of hot things and his explanation of heat. So again, I'm going to read it directly, translate in simple English, comment, John's going to translate. Is everyone with me? Everyone is okay so far? All right, great. So, fourth argument. This one is getting pretty weird. The fourth way is taken from the gradation to be found in things. Among beings there are some more and some less good, true, noble, and the like. But more and less are predicated of different things, according as they resemble in their different ways something which is the maximum, as a thing is said to be hotter according as it more nearly resembles that which is the hottest. So that there is something which is truest, something best, something noblest, consequently something which is uttermost being, for those things are greatest in truth, are greatest in being, then written in metaphors too. Now the maximum many genus is the cause of all in that genus, as fire, which is the maximum heat, is the cause of all hot things. Therefore there must also be something which is to all beings the cause of their being, goodness, and every other perfection. This we call God. So, like, this is a really strange argument. So the simple English is, when we call something hot, we're comparing it to the hottest thing. So, fire. When we are calling something good, that means we are comparing it to the best thing which is most good. The cause of all hot things is the hottest thing. And I'm guessing what he means by cause is that's the form that it comes in, but I'm not positive. He's not very clear about if he means it literally causes, like the efficient cause, like a sculptor causing. So he says, just as the cause of hot things is the hottest thing, which is fire, the cause of good things is the best thing. This best thing is called God. So commentary. This argument is Aristotelian, but it relies on Christian terms. So for Aquinas, good and perfect are very complex words, or as I told you, and there's a couple different parts of those. And one of those is existence. So for something to be good or the best, it needs to exist. That's part of being good. So this is how Aquinas says best things have to exist. So it's pretty common for this fourth argument to be criticized as just using word games by saying like, just as we compare something hot to fire, we compare something good to God, therefore God exists. But I'm pretty sure that Aquinas doesn't mean this as word games. I think he means this as an argument from form. So I think as he says, like, you know, a cup takes on the form of a cup, or a bed takes on the form of a bed, goodness is matter taking on the form of perfection. This form of perfection is God. So I think that's what Aquinas is trying to say, although it's very unclear. So many philosophers just say he's trying to use word games. I think this version makes sense because at the very least, Aristotle would understand this argument. He wouldn't agree with it, but I think Aristotle would understand it. The other option is just Aquinas, by the time he gets to the fourth argument, is running out of ideas and comes up with sort of a silly argument. But I don't like that so much. So, anyways, John, translate away.
Yeah. 确实，第四个证明是一个很奇怪的证明。然后要明白这个证明，我觉得我们需要知道更多一点它在证明中所隐含的前提。首先呢，在阿奎那的世界里，万物都是排在一些有规则的序列中，它不是一些偶然的，不是一些非常混乱的组织，而是总是在一些所谓的金字塔结构里站着的。比如说，当他举例的时候，他说这个世界上有一些冷的东西，有一些比较热的东西，有一些被烧得很热很热的东西。但是呢，在这一个热与不热的序列中，我们发现呢，所有的东西都指向了一个非常纯粹的物质。这个物质呢，可能根本就不是物质，因为古人理解火，可能和我们今天理解的一些氧化反应非常的剧烈的氧化反应非常的不同。在他们看来，火就是一种最纯粹的，完全是仅仅有热而完全没有物质的一个现象或者一个东西。那火在这个序列中就是站在了最尽头，正是因为有了特别火的性质，那么有些东西才变得热。正是因为离火的性质特别远，有些东西才变得特别冷。那好，那阿奎那这时候把眼光转向了所谓的存在的领域。当然，对于阿奎那来说，存在的就是好的，存在的越多就越好。那既然这个世界上有存在的东西，有那些行将就木的东西，那他们会不会也排成了一个序列？当然是肯定的。那在这个序列中，一定有一个尽头，一定有一个指向。那这个指向的东西，对于阿奎那来说，因为它在存在的，也是在善的最尽头，它是必然存在的。那这个东西呢，只能是上帝。很大程度上，正是因为存在的东西或多或少的分享了这个存在本身，就像一个热的东西分享了火的性质的本身，它才变热。那一个存在的东西，正是因为它分享了这个最好。所以存在的实体，也就是上帝，它才得以存在，它才得以好。所以呢，这个东西，那我们不妨把它称之为上帝。这是阿奎那的第四个证明。然后我们现在把问题再提在 QQ 上吧，或者都清楚了吗？ Is it like Plato?
There,
The light.
I mean, there's sense in which it's like Plato. It's like Plato in that Aristotle takes ideas from Plato, and then Aquinas is following Aristotle. So there is a sense that it's like Plato, but I would not think about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, and what causes the hotter is the hottest. Yeah. So when you guys were arguing before or asking before about what causes cold, according to Aquinas, I think he would say what causes the cold is the coldest. So if you pick up, like, say, if it's winter and you pick up something on the ground and it's very cold, I think he would say what causes that to be cold is that it's taking on the form of the coldest thing.
我觉得，就是这个同学问到是不是像柏拉图的，我觉得那特别有意思。就是每个人都说，阿奎那其实是一个亚里士多德主义者，而不是柏拉图主义者。我记得在上到这课的时候，我老师当时说了一句很有意思的话，他说 ，Yeah, anywhere is here Aristotelian, but only in the case of God, he is a Platonist.
Yeah.
It's very 就是他在任何其他地方都是一个亚里士多德主义者，而只有在讨论到上帝的时候，他突然间变成了一个柏拉图主义者。我觉得很有意思，就是当时的这个评论。
All right, let's go over the fifth argument, which is again sort of a interesting argument, and then we'll wrap up for next time. All right, so the fifth way is taken from the governance of the world. We see that things which lack intelligence, such as natural bodies, act for an end. This is evident from their acting always or nearly always in the same way, so as to obtain the best result. Hence it is plain that not fortuitously, but designedly do they achieve their end. Now whatever lacks intelligence cannot move towards an end, lest it be directed by some being endowed with knowledge and intelligence, the arrow is shot to its mark by the archer. Therefore some intelligent being exists by whom all natural things are directed to their end. This being we call God. So in simple English, everything has a final cause, or thing that it's designed to do. Given that things accomplish what they're designed to do, this must mean that there's some intelligent designer who's designing them to do so. This is God. And he uses the example of things which are unintelligent still accomplish their design. Like an arrow finds its target because the archer shot it. In the same way, things accomplish their design because they're intelligently designed. So commentary on this, this is somewhat like what Aristotle, this is using Aristotelian terms, but it's not what Aristotle would have agreed with. The biggest problem using the final cause like this is that it's like painting your target around the arrow after you shoot it, which is the same thing in this comic, right? She's shooting to the top right every time, so then she just repaints the target. So now she's hitting the bullseye. So Aquinas sees something in the world. He says, I wonder what it's designed to do, looks at it, and comes up with what it's designed to do, and then is amazed when it turns out that it's, how well it's designed. So that's a problem. It's like if you went to a classroom and you saw little kids painting, you might be impressed that they were able to paint well enough that you could tell what they were trying to paint. But if you didn't ask them beforehand, you might not realize that what you thought was actually a dog, or what you thought was a dog was actually a cat. So you see this little kid's painting and you think that's a great picture of a dog. But if he was trying to paint a cat, then he's not a good painter of dogs. He's a really terrible painter of cats. So even if we accept the Aristotelian logic in this, with final cause, everything has a final cause and thing it's designed to do, which, you know, you really don't have to if you don't believe in Aristotelian logic, that everything has the thing it's designed to do. Aquinas's argument still doesn't hold up that well, because you just can't tell how well things are designed based on your interpretation. You have to know what they were actually designed to do. You can't judge how good an archer you are by painting the target after the arrow is shot. You have to see where the arrow was supposed to go in the first place. All right. So, John, can I get a quick translation of that? Then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, so 就像我们说，在第二个证明中，是阿奎那把亚里士多德的4个原因，就是我们说的质料因、形式因、目的因和动力因中的动力因，应用在了他的无限归谬的论证中。那他的第5个论证，我们可以说是阿奎那把亚里士多德的目的因这个范畴，应用在了这样子一个无穷归谬的这样子一个论证中。也就是说，所有的东西呢，它当然都有一个它的目的。那这个目的总有目的，这些目的呢，它们不可能是漫无目的的到处乱窜在这样一个目的延伸的链条中。那么这些链条最后都必须通向终点，并且是一个终点。这个终点，那么我们先不管它是什么，我们先找出了它，那不妨把它叫做上帝。这是阿奎那的最后一个证明。Yeah.
All right. So let's. So fifth argument makes sense to everyone. All right. Yeah. All right. So let's sum up, get our conclusion. All right. So it's pretty easy to disagree with these arguments. So you can disagree with the premises. You can disagree with the fact, like, for instance, everything acts towards a certain end, or the infinite regress, or anything like that. You can also criticize these arguments, even if you accept them, based on the fact that they use God as an easy answer for the paradoxes they bring up, without ever explaining why that's the only answer they consider. So, for instance, instead of having God at the end of this argument, why not say an invisible force or a giant pink unicorn? Happiness. So you can really put any word in here. It's just Aquinas wants to prove the existence of God, so he puts God in there. So you can criticize it on that, and people criticize it on that. So I think what makes more sense, rather than criticizing these arguments directly, it makes more sense trying to think about them as an intelligent man dealing with these potent intellectual and social forces. He's getting all of this logic and metaphysics from Aristotle. There's enormous amount of religious pressure on him from the Catholic Church, and he tries to make sense of it all. They're very important for their impact. They impact the Catholic Church a lot. And that's the real reason why you should know them, because these are really important arguments, even if they're not very good arguments. So to conclude our outline, Quinque Viae, how did Aquinas argue? He argued using Aristotelian logic and metaphysics, but the outcome was predetermined. All right. So, conclusion. Thomas Aquinas was both a man of science and reason and a man of faith. And as part of this dichotomy, as part of being both science and reason and faith, it meant that the Catholic Church as well would sometimes be a champion of science and reason, and sometimes they'd support science, and other times they'd be a champion of faith over reason, and they'd be an enemy of science. So the Catholic Church also has a divided role, just like Aquinas did. And above all, in terms of our course, it reflects a new reality. Unlike Socrates and Aristotle, there's no longer one tradition or one authority. There are many traditions, and if you're going to be a serious philosopher like Aquinas, you need to be able to deal with all of them. You need to be able to deal with both Augustine and Aristotle, some way or another. It's a new paradigm. It's a new worldview. All right. So I think that's pretty clear. So let's hello. Let's take any questions that you guys have, and yeah, take a couple minutes taking questions. There's some very long question about Avro early in the course, and then otherwise I can see you guys on Wednesday. How are you doing, Don?
Fine. Oh, there
Oh,
comes.
there. Oh, wow. All right.
Wow.
Wow, Denise is going for the big questions. So the Averroes held on the basis of their interpretation of Aristotle that soul, insofar as it's not individual, it's not immortal. Mortal belongs only to the intellect, which is impersonal and identical in different intellectual beings. When it was forcibly brought to their notice that this doctrine is contrary to the Catholic faith, what does Catholic faith say about this? That they are contrary. Let's save that one. I'm gonna address your other questions because I think for this to be a good, I think for this to be a useful question for the rest of the class, we would have to have covered the Averroes. What is the fourth book that matters treated, which cannot be known apart from Revelation? Talking about, geez, these are some serious questions. Let me, all right. God is his own essence. Why is there an example where essence is not existence? All right. So let's cover just the third one for now, and then the first two I'll write back to later. But I think the third one is like more understandable for the rest of the class based on what we talked about today. So the difference between essence and existence, where God is versus what God does, in very simple terms. So existence is literally existing. Essence is what makes you you. So for instance, if you think of if someone just saw you, right? They, like, from across a crowd, they know you existed, but they wouldn't have any idea of what makes you a person. So in that sense, your essence is separate from your existence, because like your mom could say a lot more about what makes you a person than a random person who sees you from across the street. Both people would say you existed. Both people would have no doubt you existed. But essence in that case would be, you'd have to ask your mom for a much better idea of your essence than your existence. That's the very simple answer. Mover is potentiality, and moved is actuality. Not quite. So the mover, if you think, so I have a water bottle, right? Water bottle, boom. All right, so this could potentially drop, or it could be potentially be lifted. I'm lifting it. I'm the mover. Now it is my decision as the mover to transform this potentially dropping to actually dropping. All right. I caused that to actually drop. So that's the actual movement. Before I went like that, it could potentially move. Existence is being and essence is equality. That's a reasonable way of understanding it, I think.
Yeah, I think essence is the principal quality of something. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. It's 11:05. So let's call it a class for right now. If you guys have any other questions, you can at me in QQ chat, and I'm happy to answer as soon as I get them in between classes. Reddit is also a excellent means of answering, of asking questions and answering questions. Thank you for reminding me. All right, I'll see you guys on Wednesday. John, I'll see you again in a week.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Oh.